Hey guys, what's going on? Tyrauku here, and I hope you're all doing great. Today, I want to talk about something that is talked about a ton when it comes to clan boss, which is speed tuning, but it's not really talked about that often when it comes to arena, at least not anymore. There was a little phase where it was pretty popular, but then I think it's kind of died off, or at least not as popular. So I want to jump in here and explain this because a few accounts that I've been into recently to help them out with, I don't think their teams were very speed tuned, which can make the difference of easy farms. And whether you're in gold 4 arena, whether you're in silver or even bronze, I mean, granted, if you're in bronze, you may have a lot less champions to choose from to do the speed tuning, but it's going to help you out no matter what. Okay. Now, Deadwood has a arena calculator on his website, which I'll be using this today. And I'll also link it down below. So if you guys want to check it out, deadwoodjedi.com/arena-calculator. It's a lot of help. But today I want to go through not necessarily how to speed tune per se, because a typical, like a common team is like, for a while I used Arbiter as the leader for the speed aura, which we're going to go everything based off of using Arbiter for the leader speed aura today. You can use anybody with a speed aura. It's just going to help your team go first. This is not going to be a go second strategy, but I mean, if you're using Haikatune, same principles, Arbiter, Gorgrab, anybody with that, speed aura, and they got the speed boosts as well. So a lot of times what I used to do is I would use Arbiter into Siphi. Pretty good speed boosts there. Actually, I'd use Siphi into Arbiter. So Siphi would go first, increase speed. Arbiter would do turn meter boost. And then I would have my Madame Ceres. And then like a Trunda if I had her, or whatever nuker I was using at the time. That makes my nuker have to be pretty fast, especially when you start climbing faster and faster speeds. Then your nuker, the person who's going last, has to be faster and faster along with them. Well, once I got Kymar, it opened my eyes up even more to say, hey, if you have a champion who does similar things to like Kymar, and we'll go over a lot more, your speed tuning requirements go from here to like way down here, which is like pretty low. But man, I know you can't see it from the webcam, but it's pretty daggone low. All right. So all these champions are going to have pretty similar builds. Honestly, my Kymar's masteries will probably be the same that you use for any of these champions because all these champions need a few things. They need to be they need to be fast. So I picked up the Lore of Steel mastery to get a little extra bonuses from my perception sets if I'm running those, from the speed sets, a little extra speed, and you're going to need to be accurate because all these champions rely on affecting the enemy in some way, whether it's placing a debuff, reducing their turn meter, or something along those lines. So speed and accuracy are going to be the two most popular stats throughout this whole thing. And then basically, let's go ahead and go over some champions. Okay, so I have a list of about 10 champions, maybe 11. I'm pretty sure it's 10 that I'm going to go over. Each one of them kind of have their own benefits. We have some legendaries, we have some epics, and even a rare who I think has a pretty legit place in this list as it is. So the first champion, obviously, is Kymar that I was going to talk about. Kymar, the reason why he makes speed tuning basically not as impactful, it doesn't really matter, is because if you have your fastest champion, which I'll go ahead and jump in here. I'll give you guys an example because this is the champion that I use. So my Kymar, now back to what I said originally, you do have to be faster than the enemy. So your speed booster, your, for my case, Siphi and Kymar, these two champions do need to be faster than the enemy. So if they're slower, I'm going to go second, and it doesn't matter what kind of speed tune I have. But in this case, we're going to turn it off of auto. What happens here is your speed booster, whether it's Arbiter, Gorgrab, Siphi, doesn't matter. They give that little initial speed boost, okay? So in Siphi's case, she doesn't have a huge turn meter boost, things like 10 or 15%. She has an increased speed as well. So my Kymar has to be 315 speed and very high accuracy. Well, the other downside of Siphi is if I did that, the rest of my people on my team would have to be very, very fast. In my case, my Solus is like 170 speed, I think, and my Siphi's like 357. So there's a huge gap there. But what happens here is the Kymar will sleep the enemy. You'll see the Arbiter took her turn, Seeker took his turn as well. Both those champions took their turns before my Madam took her turn. What that allowed me to do with Kymar going right there and putting the enemy to sleep is, as you can see, everybody's asleep here. Their fastest champions did wake up, which is not a big deal because they woke up from the sleep, but they didn't get a turn. So as long as my Solus isn't like crazy far away from Kymar, like Kymar was 315 and Solus was like 120 speed. I did try running with my Hernding before, who actually was 120 speed, and that doesn't work as well. But having the enemy slept with Kymar allows me to have a very big gap between Kymar's spot and thus Solus and Madam's spot. Having Solus so slow allows me to stack his damage much, much higher. Now, let me show you guys what my Solus looks like. We have a speed of 194 on him. Now, I did run him before with a speed of 170, and that works out perfectly fine as well. I did boost it to 194 just so he's a little bit easier to like keep cycling around through his turns. But as you can see, both the enemies still took their turns. Solus took his turn. Boom. Now, Kymar has the benefit of being able to reset skills, so he's amazing. But he allows for a massive benefit in Arena for giving that gap between your champions. So if you have a Kymar and you've wondered why he's so good, right there, his A2 ability is a huge reason why in the arena, you don't have to worry about speed tuning. And it frees up so much stuff when it comes to building your teams, because you don't have to worry about, hey, my Madam needs to be 250 speed, and then my Nuker needs to be 230 at least, which makes it very difficult to gear for damage dealing gear as well. Like my Solus, there's no way I could get him to do as much damage as he is now if he was needing an extra 30 speed, okay? Now, the second champion I want to talk about is Warlord. Now, I don't have Warlord, so there's going to be no showcasing of Warlord, but Warlord has a benefit where Kymar doesn't exactly. Kymar places his sleep and he does a strip, so it's his A2 ability strips the enemy and does a sleep, but it hits the enemy, so it has a chance to weak hit. He's magic affinity, so he's weak against force affinities. So, with that said, sometimes the sleep doesn't land. If you don't have enough accuracy, it doesn't land either. If they have immunity and for some reason it doesn't strip the immunity, then it won't land the sleep. However, Warlord, it doesn't matter about weak hits because he is a void affinity champion, so he's getting no weak hits. And it doesn't matter because this ability goes through immunity anyways. So if the enemy has a full set of immunity gear on, unlike Kymar where he needs to strip that and then apply his debuff, Warlord doesn't have to worry about that. It attacks all enemies, has a 70% chance of putting each target skill on cooldown, and enemies' ability 1s are not that intimidating, right? Like if everybody can only use their basic ability, you're not in that much of a threat. Well, Warlord puts everybody's skill on cooldowns for the full turn meter, okay? So if this ability has a 4-turn cooldown, he locks it out, boom. The enemy can't use that ability for 4 turns, which is crazy. Plus, has a 30% chance to fully deplete the target's turn meter, which is absolute insanity. So basically, having Warlord go right after your speed booster allows you a lot of freedom in taking the match pretty slow. Now, with this and a few of the other champions, you do have to be careful because the enemies can still use their A1s, like I mentioned, and champions like Herndig, champions like Kandrafon, champions who have very hard-hitting ability 1s can definitely do some damage to your team still, if you don't bring like maybe a shield set or some proper protection. If you had like a Siffy, maybe just play around with that and keep that in mind that you do still need protection, whether they're doing these set their abilities to cooldowns or if they're doing provokes, anything like that where the enemy can still take a turn. You do have to be careful because they can still do some work, especially Herndig. Herndig does very good against Warlord, and the fact that he can one-shot somebody, get an extra turn, and then basically all the stuff's off cooldown because of how his kit actually works. So Warlord, another champion who's amazing. Base speed is going to be very important when looking at these champions because you still will need this second champion to be fairly fast. If you're using Arbiter, they don't have to be as fast because Arbiter's speed boosts allow such a big gap, and I actually have her pulled up here. Like if you have a 300 speed Arbiter, I already plugged this into the calculator. If you have a 300 speed Arbiter, which is Arbiter right here, 300 speed using her A3 ability, which her A3 ability is, in case you don't know, Arbiter A3 is the turn meter boost ability. Now, if you plug the A4 in there, it does say it's a bigger gap here. That's just because the A4, if it actually reses somebody, she can go again and take the A2 or the A3 ability. So just do it with the A3. This is correct. 300 speed. If she uses that A3, the second person to go only needs 232 speed in order to be speed tuned. So obviously, if you don't know the importance of speed tuning, maybe I should address that at the beginning of the video. But this allows you to not be cut in by the enemy. If the enemy team is speed tuned and they cut in, then basically you're going to be ruined on your offense attack because they're probably going to kill you in most arena matches. So Warlord was the second one I want to talk about. The third one is a champion who used to be used a lot. I used to use her. I loved her, okay? She's such a good champion, and she kind of plays into a few of the others we're going to go over, but that's Molly Tankard. Molly has a benefit of, unlike Kymar and unlike Warlord, well, Warlord can't weak hit because of his being void affinity. Molly can't weak hit because she doesn't hit at all. She hits on her A1, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about their A2 ability. Places a Provoke debuff on all enemies for 1 turn, has a 50% chance of placing Provoke debuff for 2 turns instead, places a 30% reflect damage buff on this champion for 2 turns. You book this down, 3-turn cooldown, okay? She has a 50% chance of placing that Provoke for 2 turns instead of 1. 2-turn Provoke is crazy good, okay? And she doesn't hit the enemy, so there's no weak hit. It's just place. So all she needs is to be fast, speed tune with your fastest champion, and then have very good accuracy, okay? Now, for my champion, if I was going to build Molly, I'd probably want her to be at least 500 accuracy, 600 accuracy. If I could do even higher than that, perfect, depending on where you're at in the arena. I mean, if you're in bronze, you could probably get away with 200 accuracy. Nobody really runs much resistance in bronze arena. If you're in silver, I'm sure you could get away with 200, 300 accuracy, pretty much no problem. Let me know if you're in low-level arenas and you use Molly, what accuracy level do you get away with? Like I said, not very many people are running resistance, so you should be fine with a pretty low level. But this ability is so good. I mean, not to mention the fact that she works very good in Go second teams as well, but we're focusing on like a first team. So basically, assuming the enemy doesn't have immunity or anything like that on their team, your Arbiter, Gore Grab, Haikatune will boost, Molly will provoke the enemy, and then the enemy can only use their A1 ability. And when you lock out the speed booster from using anything else except for their A1 ability, the speed gap you can have between your champions is just so massive. Now, this list that I'm giving is not going to be an exhaustive list. There's plenty more champions who are going to be in the game right now, who are going to be coming in the future, who will have these provoke, sleep, stuns even. I was going to add Astralon in here because he does have a 100% chance to stun, but I don't think he's a very good champion to build as a second champion to go in your team just to lock out the enemies as a stun. He's so good in other areas, but this is not going to be an exhaustive list. I want to give you guys the idea and maybe even a few other options you didn't think about to actually build for some arena stuff to make your speed tuning just so much easier. Gearing champions like this is drastically easier than Arbiter into whatever else may be. Just keeping your speed tune, your team's speed tune like that. Like yesterday I was in an account, they had Arbiter as a leader, but then they had 3 other champions who weren't really contributing to allowing less speed requirements to the others, okay? So keep that in mind. The next champion I want to mention is Visix, okay? This is going to be very similar to Molly. Unfortunately, she doesn't have a 2-turn provoke, but an attacks all enemies. She's void affinity, so she's not going to be weak hitting. Places a provoke debuff for 1 turn. And this is a key with Molly and Visix. Places a provoke means it's not a 70% chance to land the provoke. So all you have to worry about is the 3% chance the enemy resists it, which is just built into the game. But the places a provoke is so good because you don't have to worry about the percentage chance at missing the enemy. Places a shield buff on this champion also equal to 20% of their max HP for 2 turns. Visix has a decent base HP, nothing crazy, good defense, good speed. So she's a good candidate along with Molly of actually placing that provoke because the enemy, like I mentioned, Herndigs, Candrafons, typically like maybe even a Trunda, champions who you're going to be provoking are probably going to have a nuker on their team anyways, right? And Visix is a free champion, so you're going to be expecting the enemy to actually attack you. So you want to be able to actually sustain those first few attacks. So champions like Molly, Visix, a lot of these champions are very solid. Most champions with provokes in their kit are going to be able to withstand a few attacks. Like there's no attack-based champion with provoke, right? Now, if you put an attack-based champion in provoke set, that'd be a little different, but champions like this should withstand those attacks pretty well, but hopefully you'll be able to go with your full rotation before the enemy's DPS champions or their damage dealers go anyways, because you're going to have that speed boost from Arbiter, that turn meter boost from Arbiter, that boost from Haikatune, whatever it may be, applying to your champions, whereas the enemy won't because their Arbiter would have just attacked you with their A1 ability, canceling out her other stuff, and allowing you to be much lower off on your speed tune. Now, keep in mind like what I said before though, you can't be like 370 speed and then expect your 150 speed champion to take a turn before their possibly 370 speed booster does her A1 and then does her turn meter boost as well. So keep in mind, while this makes it a lot easier to speed tune and keep your champions all in line, you still have to have some speed on your champions. It just takes the requirement lowers it a lot, significantly drops it, and allows you to build a lot more damage, okay? Now, a new champion I want to talk about, Cornelia. This champion is actually one who I'm going to be building, I think, during CVC. If I have the books, I would really like to test her out some more. But this A2 ability, I've seen a lot of people say that she's a weaker version of Kymar. And in the sense that she places a sleep on the enemy, yeah, she would be a weaker version of Kymar, but Kymar has the benefit of stripping the enemy and resetting your cooldowns. So I don't know if it's super accurate to compare to Kymar, but I guess if you're talking about the sleep and the speed tuning, then yeah, it's fair compared to Kymar. So she has an 80% chance of placing a sleep debuff on all enemies for 1 turn. Now this is great because unlike Kymar, where Kymar hits the enemy, has a chance to weak hit, neither one of these champions are Void Affinity. Cornelia doesn't have a chance to weak hit because she doesn't hit the enemy at all anyways. This books up to a 100% chance because 80 plus 10 is 90, and then plus 2 5s is 100. So 100% chance of landing sleep debuff on all enemies, which this goes back to the same thing as Kymar, but she also has the benefit of chance of placing sleep after the chance of placing fear, after the sleep has fallen off, which I believe if the sleep falls off naturally, that chance of placing fear is there, which I am going to try that out, but that's an extra benefit, right? So if the champion does wake up, if they are fast, then boom, the fear has a chance to land and it has a chance to actually activate for the next turn, which is another very good debuff. Now, I didn't include anybody with fear, your Mashalds, anybody who places fear on the enemy. I didn't include them in this speed tuning list because fear is RNG. Though it feels like when it applies to me that it always activates, it doesn't actually always activate. I think it's like a 75% chance, maybe even less, but it doesn't always activate. So I wanted something that does always activate, like sleep, ability lockouts, provokes, possibly stuns, but things like that. This Cornelia, I think she's a very good champion. And honestly, this A3 ability, I think has really good uses as well. We'll get into that when we actually go over her, if I make a video on her. And she's a speed aura for Arena. So if you have her, awesome. If you didn't complete the Mother Side Bell fusion, then hey, hopefully you picked her up. Maybe you picked up Magnar as well, which I'm not going to be talking about him in this video. Well, I just did, but I'm not going to talk about him anymore in this video, but all great champions. The next one is a champion who is also a epic champion. I think she is... she used to be very talked about. I'm sure she probably still is. I don't see as much about her, but she's Void Affinity, so no weak hits, attacks all enemies. Now, this ability you do need booked out because an 80% chance of placing Provoke feels very, very bad when you're in the arena and you miss that Provoke, okay? So you definitely want to book her. She's a very good champion, but she has an 80% chance of placing Provoke for 2 turns. I mentioned with Molly has a chance of placing it for 2 turns. Umbral does place it for 2 turns. 2 turns of the enemy being provoked. If you can't kill the enemy in 2 turns of them only doing the A1 ability to a champion who has unkillable, then you probably need to build your damage dealers a little bit better or pick your matches a little bit wiser because you're probably going against a way too tanky team for your setup. Now, granted, she does place block active skills on this champion for 5 turns. You used to be able to cleanse this off of her, but you can't anymore. Unfortunately, you could run Doom Priest with her. The good old days, right? You could run Doom Priest, cleanse this, easy peasy, do this the next turn, but now you can't, so no reason to even talk about it. But she'll provoke everybody for 2 turns, make speed tuning even easier, because in this case, you could run 150 speed on your nuker because you have 2 turns. If you don't take a turn before their speed booster gets back around to boost the speed within 2 turns, then you must have some massive speed gaps or something's going on wrong there. With a champion like this, it makes the speed gap you can have between your champions just so much bigger, okay? Another epic that I want to talk about is, and after this epic, we actually have a rare champion who I think is a very solid and honorable mention. Now, Umbral, a lot of these champions, you do have to pay attention to their base speed because her base speed sitting at 93 is not amazing. Unfortunately, it's kind of low, actually. I was going to add Rockbreaker to this list. He has 91 base speed, not a very good base speed, but if you're running her with somebody like Arbiter and you look up the speed tunes like this, you can get Umbral to 232 speed and be perfectly fine, okay? Get her to 232 speed, get her very high accuracy, maybe even 250, depending on where you're at in the arena. These numbers should be reasonable to hit. Like if you're doing a 300 speed Arbiter, you should be able to throw some Perception Gear onto Umbral Enchantress and get her to be, well, right here it says 251, okay? So we're going to use the A3. So right here, if Arbiter's using her A3 ability, you're going to need to get Umbral to 251 speed, get her good accuracy. This shouldn't be super far out of the question, but that is something you need to consider when looking at any of these champions, is what their base speed is or how good of banners you have, because banners will add some speed to your champions, which is very, very nice and could make or break the difference between the factions if you can use a Demon Spawn champion. Unfortunately for me, I don't have very good speed banners for Demon Spawn, so my Kymar was struggling for the longest of time by not having a good speed banner, but I did get lucky and get one during CVC that helped out a lot. But other than this one, I have like 9 speed on a banner, that's all. Some factions have a lot better. Some factions have these ones with like 16 plus 6. My Arbiter has a very good speed banner as well. So it does depend on the luck of your account for sure. But base speed is very important also. The next champion I want to mention is Basher. Now, Basher is kind of like a baby Warlord, okay? Warlord puts the enemy's skills to complete cooldown, where Basher puts the enemy's skills to cooldown for 2 turns. Now, 2-turn cooldown is very, very good. This also has the benefit of never weak hitting, and also has the benefit of going through immunity. So if you get Basher fast, he's 95 base speed, which isn't bad. You don't have to worry about enemies with immunity stopping you from doing this. Now, this doesn't provoke the enemies, so the enemies can use their A1s on whoever they want. So if it's like an enemy Hermdig, if it's an enemy Candrophon, you gotta expect that if they attack your lowest HP champion, which is probably your nuke champion, they very well may kill him depending on how you have that actually built. So you do have to still be mindful when you use champions like Basher, but Basher is a very, very good champion in allowing you to be speed tuned pretty easily, because setting all the targets cooldowns to 2 or increasing the cooldowns by 2 or whatever, however I can word this without actually reading this text. I don't know why I didn't just read the text, but this ability increases the cooldown of all the target skills by 2 turns is a very, very solid ability. Now, also keep in mind, against Mortu Macabre, Basher and Warlord don't actually do anything and can proc his secret skill. And then if he procs his secret skill, you're dead. Okay, that's all there is to that. If you've ran the campaign, if you've ran Doom Tower, you know Peril. It's just game over, right? Block revive, easy clap, done. Come again, I guess. Gnarlhorn is the next one. So Gnarlhorn is a rare champion who I thought was a pretty solid mention for this list. So many of you may have him. If you got him from a shard, if you've already done your Rosin Fusion, I know he's part of the Rosin Fusion. It took me forever to get him. I could just not get him from a shard, but if you do have him, he has several good uses. He's got good use in the Doom Tower. He's got good use in dungeons, depending on if you're coming up where you're at in the game. He's just a solid champion overall. I mean, he has an unkillable on this champion for 2 turns. 5 turn, books down 2 more turns, so 3-turn cooldown. Unkillable for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown is very, very good. His A1, solid as well. Nothing crazy here, but I mean, you could put him in like a stun set or something if you wanted to use him in other content. But his A2 is what I want to talk about with his speed tuning stuff. Places a provoke debuff on all enemies for 1 turn. Places a 30% increased defense buff on this champion. So this is doing 2 things. One, it's placing, it's not hitting. So he's just going to place the provoke on all enemies for 1 turn. So it's very similar to Molly, where it's not a hit, so there's no chance of weak hits. So he's getting the benefit from there. Plus, he's increasing his defense by 30%, which isn't huge, but if you're using Arbiter, not Siphi, then you don't have an increased defense anyways. So it's allowing him to tank more hits because his base defense isn't crazy good. It's 936, pretty I guess, but I mean, you're getting the benefits here, which are very nice. And if you can get around to the unkillable, even better. 17,000 base HP, I mean, he's a rare champion. You can't expect to be crazy high numbers, but 17,000 base HP is definitely a respectable amount. You can build him to survive a few A1 hits, plus his increased defense. All of it works pretty well to make for a champion who, if you use after, you'll probably be using him earlier on in the arena, maybe after your Haikatoon, maybe after your Gore Grab, some champion who you're using early game in the arena before you get your Arbiter. But having him go second, provoking the enemy, because they probably, especially the lower levels of arena, they're probably not running immunity sets. They're probably not having Necrits protect their nuker. They're probably pretty open to getting provoked. And if you provoke them, boom, perfect. Not a problem whatsoever. And I don't think you're going to have an issue with him surviving their hits. And this just messes up teams, especially in bronze, silver, and even low gold. Like if you're provoking the enemy, there's not going to be a whole lot most of them can do, I imagine. So definitely Gnarlhorn is a very budget option when it comes to kind of manipulating speed tunes. Now, all these champions we went over here, I haven't really gotten to the speed calculator with, because honestly, as long as there's speed tune with your Arbiter in some way, like Gnarlhorn, he would need to be 250 speed. If you have a 300 speed Arbiter and you're using her A3 first, they're all going to need to be pretty similar speed, whether it's Gnarlhorn, whether it's Molly, whether it's Visix. I mean, they're all going to be slightly varied, not very big at all. Let's do Visix. I think it very much depends on what their base speed is. Gnarlhorn's one of those champions who has a decent base speed. I believe it's better than Umbral's, but it's not crazy. It's 96, okay? So it's a little bit better than Umbral's, but it's not crazy, like I said. That's where the minimum speed gets changed based on how high you have it. Now, let's go ahead and do this for Arbiter. Triple Lord of Steel, yeah. So this changes it a little bit there. But the next 2 champions I want to talk about, these 2 champions you will need to throw in the calculator. There's a lot more champions like this. Basically, these 2 champions are going to manipulate the target's turn meter. it's Lysandra, which Lysandra plus Arbiter allows you to be so slow in your speed tune. It's actually crazy. Lysandra has her A3 ability, which increases your speed by 30%, fills your ally's turn meter by 30%, and decreases the enemy's turn meter by 30%. Now, Lysandra also needs speed and accuracy. So she's a little bit difficult to build possibly, but the same thing with these other champions. If you're running her with Arbiter, then boom, look. I mean, you can run her by herself because she does have a good speed aura, 24% versus 30 from Arbiter. But if you have Arbiter and Lysandra, the speeds of these champions down here can be so slow. So when you're doing the Deadwood Jedi arena calculator, you do need to select this ability, the ally accuracy, because if you have enough accuracy to decrease their turn meter, which is no hit, so there's no chance of weak hitting, so it's always going to decrease it, assuming you have enough accuracy and there's no 3% chance to resist. It's always built into the game. Then your champions need to be 129 speed, okay? Now, I don't recommend building your champions this slow. Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it. And you're going to find the issue here being if you don't nuke them, you're going to have a hard time, or if they resist, you're going to have a hard time getting those champions down here, these slow speeds, to actually take a turn. Now, put the ally accuracy off, 179 speed, that's a pretty decent speed requirement. 179 speed, you got a lot of room to build a very good nuke champion, or you can just find somewhere in the middle. Maybe throw it at like 165, 159, okay? Just give them a little bit of speed, but still, I mean, you can go free, do whatever you want with the damage, make your champions hit as hard as you want, because these champions take speed basically out of the equation. Now, the last champion I want to talk about is another epic champion who I'm actually a huge fan of, and that's Shatterbones. Shatterbones, he can do some solid damage. He can hit pretty hard. Now, he can weak hit on this ability. He's Force Affinity, so he'll be weak hitting against the Duchesses. He'll be weak hitting against Magnars if you go against him. But against Spirit Champions, he can weak hit. He has a 50% chance to decrease the turn meter by 30%. That's each hit, okay? Now, his 50% chance gets booked up to 50, 60, 75% chance each hit of decreasing the turn meter by 30%. Now, obviously, we're all mathematicians here, right? So we can all say 30% times 3 would be 90%. If I'm following along correctly, Shatterbones has the potential of decreasing the enemy's turn meter 90%, which is almost 100%, which means that your speed tune would be very, very easy to hit. However, if you plug Shatterbones into the calculator, it doesn't show up correctly for whatever reason. However, he has a very solid A3 ability, which does show up pretty well. And that basically decreases the enemy's turn meter, or decreases the enemy's speed, and fills your turn meter of your allies pretty well. Sorry, hit the Windows button there. But yeah, so this ability looks pretty solid, and this does good, even if you're just going to use the A3. But yeah, the A3 ability. Now, the A2, like I mentioned, it doesn't actually show the speed tune that you can have there, but he does very good about reducing the enemy's turn meter. Granted, these could all miss. These could all weak hit, so that's kind of why I saved him for last. He does have a pretty solid multiplier on his A2 ability as well, so you can get him to hit pretty hard. So Shatterbones is a very solid champion. If maybe you pulled him early on, you don't have any very good option to make your speed tune easier, Shatterbones is a very, very good option to throw into your team, make it even easier to work with the enemy's turn meter. He's even solid later on into the arena. You just gotta be mindful that there's more RNG involved in this, which, I mean, Raid, you love RNG, right? RNG in shard openings, RNG in arena, RNG in dungeons, RNG. It feels like RNG is in everything. So let's add a little more RNG with this. But hey, it is what it is. You can get the mastery, what is it? That increases the chance to actually land ability. So Sniper Mastery increases the chance of placing any debuff from skills or artifacts by 5%. So you can do that on Shatterbones. I believe that should increase the chance of actually landing that turn meter decrease, which should be solid. And yeah, feel free to check those champions out. Sorry this video went a little bit longer than I expected it to, almost 30 minutes of talking about these champions. But hey, this applies to any champion that you're using that has similar effects. It's not just locked up to these 10 or however many I did. Any champion who has a Provoke, a Sleep, a turn meter reduction, they all can make your speed tuning arena much easier. But I wanted to stray away from champions like, say, a Seeker, okay? Seeker and Arbiter are pretty popular. Now, this is not impossible to do, and your champions still don't have to be crazy high speed requirements, right? Madame Sarah's at 195 speed. That's not too bad. But when you start reaching like 350 speed, which nowadays is not that crazy high, then you're looking at a Seeker who needs to be 265 speed. Now you're looking at a Bat Eater Seeker basically being in your arena team. And then boom, your Madame Ceres now needs to be 230 speed. And then your Trunda needs to be 230 speed as well. So let's make believe we all have Trundas, okay? I wish I did. It'd be awesome. But I use Solus. My Solus, he wouldn't be in this team because there's no increased defense, but he would need to be 233 speed. There's no way I can throw an extra 33 speed on my Solus, an extra, actually probably 40 speed, right? Because he's 190, almost an extra 40 speed, and make him still do the kind of damage that he does now, okay? So having these champions, Angar is another mention that you could actually definitely throw in. Very solid champion with a good provoke. So many different champions. Drexstar possibly even. Can weak hit. You probably need to get this booked up. I don't think it goes to 100%. So there's so many other options you can throw in. These are just my examples. Rosin, decent option. Decreased turn meter by 100%. Possible to weak hit. Need some accuracy. But there's a lot of different champions who allow for speed tunes to be a lot easier. These are the 10 champions that I think are very solid, very much worth you looking into if you haven't already. Makes building your arena team so much easier, allowing your Madame Ceres, your debuff champion, whatever it may be, to be a lot higher accuracy, a lot more comfortable speed, and then your DPS champion can actually do the damage needed to actually one-shot the enemy team without you having to worry about, okay, where can I squeeze this speed from so I don't get cut in and end up losing the match? All right, guys, hopefully that video helps you out when it comes to speed tuning. I'm going to leave a link to Deadwood's website down below. If you need to figure out how to use it, I'm sure he has a video on his website as well. It's pretty simple. You just type in your displayed speed on your champion. You put their ability, type in what champion it is, give which champion has a speed aura, Arbiter, Kymar, Haikatoon, Gorgrab, doesn't matter who, your leader, put your speed sets, put your Lure Steel, put your second champion to go. This is the one that only really matters, the second champion. If they're a turn meter boost, say A2, A3, boom. That's going to be what your third champion, your fourth champion need. Now, if you use like Deacon, it doesn't matter. Just play around with it, throw in your champions, see what speed tunes you need in order to do the arena matches and not have to worry about the enemy cutting in on your turns. Now, there are a bunch of other factors that play into enemy's Hegemon, enemy Valkyrie, enemy Yoshi. There's a lot of other factors that play into, hey, are they possibly going to cut into my team and take a turn before I can finish my rotation? Or am I going to be able to work something like this? So this is just a very, I guess, basic overview, as basic as an overview can be for 30 minutes. But either way, guys, thank you all very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any other champions who you found to be maybe even pretty budget, that work very well with allowing your speed tune to be very, very flexible, definitely leave it down in the comment section below. I'm very interested in knowing. But thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it helps you out, and I'll catch you in the next one.